The structure of a news story. A news story answers 6 questions, the 5 W's and the 1 H. Who, what, where, why, when, and how. When you are writing a news story, you need to provide answers to all those questions in the quickest possible way. With sources, you need to prioritize the ones that are the most trustworthy. Eyewitnesses or people who have experienced it firsthand, or official sources. There is no room for suspense in a news story. It is in fact the opposite. You give it all away as fast as you can. Your first sentence should give answers to at least 3 of those questions. Your reader needs to learn the core of your story by reading the first sentence. A structure that has been used by journalists for many years is called an inverted pyramid. It means you start with the most important information and then add in details which are less significant. Why? Because if a reader wants to quickly skim your story, they can learn the gist by just reading the lead, say your first paragraph. Also, your copy will be edited. Using the inverted pyramid helps the sub-editor to chop details from the bottom, knowing that they have not omitted the most important information. It is always better to have more than one source for each story. The more contentious the story, the more important to balance it by bringing in opposing views. The purpose of a news story is to communicate information quickly. In order to do that, think about the language that you're using. Use simple, short sentences. Don't make it too flowery. Don't use jargon and technical terms. Don't fall in the trap of cliché. Basically, think about saying it in the quickest, simplest way possible. Let's try an example of a good first sentence. Let's go back to the Grenfell fire, which started just before 1 a.m. Imagine this is a news story published around 9 a.m. on that day. How about this? A huge fire that started after midnight has engulfed a residential tower in West London, with many casualties feared. Let's count. How many questions have we answered there? A huge fire, what? That started after midnight, when? Has engulfed a residential tower in West London, where? With many casualties feared. That's 3. To bring in a bit of color and atmosphere, use quotes. That means you use parts of what your sources have said exactly as they have said it, and then attribute it to the source. Later in the Grenfell story, we can have something like this. Imagine you were on the ground in the morning and you have spoken to some of the residents. You can have a sentence followed by a quote like this. Many people are still unaccounted for, raising the fears that the number of casualties will increase. Quote, I have never seen anything like it, end quote, said Jane Smith, a senior firefighter who was one of the first responders. Quote, the evacuation was a complete chaos, end quote. In a news story, you need a not graph, a paragraph in which you explain the context in a nutshell. I like using the 4th paragraph for this purpose. All the hard work you did to gather information on a local story is about to bear fruit. Before you do the writing, I want to show you an example from the day that we're filming this. Here we go. Okay, so this is the 30th of June 2021, and I'm looking at the front page of BBC News. It's full of football news, but I have no interest in football, so I'm going to see what else is out there. Oh, I am interested in climate change. Dozens dead amid historic Canada heat wave. Let's see what this news story is. So the headline, Canada weather, dozens dead as heat wave shatters records. Let's see how the structure works. The first paragraph is, dozens of people have died in Canada amid an unprecedented heat wave that has smashed temperature records. So how many questions are we answering? Dozens of people, Canada, unprecedented heat wave. Even temperature record. So 3 or 4, that's not bad at all. Second paragraph, police in the Vancouver area have responded to more than 130 sudden deaths since Friday. Most were elderly or had underlying health conditions, with heat often a contributing factor. Again, the journalist is giving us a lot of details about the story. Canada broke its temperature record for a 3rd straight day on Tuesday, 49.6 degrees centigrade in Lytton, British Columbia. The US Northwest has also seen record highs and a number of fatalities, right? So far, we've got a lot of details about what the story is. This paragraph, I believe it's their not graph. Let's see what it says. Experts say climate change is expected to increase the frequency of extreme weather, such as heat waves. However, linking any single event to global warming is complicated. And then it goes on to say the heat over western parts of Canada and the US has been caused by a dome of static high pressure, hot air stretching from California to the Arctic territories. Temperatures have been easing in coastal areas, but there is not much respite for inland regions. I think that kind of gives you a very good idea of how to basically start from the very important information, because we're saying people have died, they have died in Canada, and the reason for it, the why, was the heat wave. And then we go into more details, and then we kind of put it in context by looking at what climate change is doing and how the frequency of these extreme weather events are increasing. Now, I want you to check out a news story from any news source. Look at the story from the day you are watching this. And now, without further ado, your task is to produce a 6-paragraph news story. Give us the most important information in the first paragraph. Follow that with some more important details in the second. Provide a quote in the third. Get to some background, then nuts and bolts in the fourth. Then decide what needs to be brought in the remaining 2 paragraphs. Good luck.